on a luxury jet she built with her own hands. Dr. Maya Carter, a black aviation CEO, is slapped in front of her staff by a powerful white executive, Richard Hale, in an act of arrogance and racism meant to break her spirit. What follows is a storm of betrayal, silence, and systemic abuse as Richard uses his influence to smear her name and destroy her company. Yet with courage, allies, and undeniable evidence, Maya fights back, exposing decades of fraud, corruption, and discrimination. From whispered conversations in back rooms to explosive courtroom revelations and a press conference that shakes the nation, every chapter of her journey builds toward poetic justice. The arrogant man who once thought himself untouchable is brought down in front of the world, while Maya reclaims her power, her dignity, and her skies. The tarmac glistened in the morning sun, heat waves rippling off the silver fuselage of the sleek Gulfstream jet. A small crew bustled near the stairs, greeting the arriving clients with polished smiles. Maya Carter stepped out of her black SUV, tailored navy suit, crisp against her warm skin tone, hair pulled into a low bun. Her expression was calm, but her heart tightened. She knew today would test her. "Dr. Carter, welcome," the pilot said softly. She nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Thank you, Captain." Inside the cabin, a group of men in designer suits already occupied the cream leather seats. Their voices were loud, overlapping, the kind of laughter that filled space as if claiming ownership. One man stood out, Richard Hale, tall, silver-haired, exuding arrogance like cologne. He glanced up, eyes narrowing at Maya as she entered. Richard smirked. "Ah, the assistant's here. Can we get some coffee before we talk numbers?" The laughter rose again. Maya's jaw tightened. "I'm not the assistant. I'm the owner of this jet, and the founder of Skylink Aviation." For a beat, silence. Then Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "Owner." Cutie leaned back, spreading his arms. "They really put anyone in charge these days, huh?" Another man muttered under his breath. "Diversity hire." The word stung, casual as a cough. Maya set her briefcase down slowly, deliberately. Her voice was even. "Gentlemen, this flight is for business. If that's what you came for, let's begin." Richard ignored her. He turned to the man beside him. "Ever notice how they get so sharp, always on edge? Relax, sweetheart. No one's questioning your skills." His pause dripped with sarcasm. Maya's assistant, Carla, slipped in behind her, face pale. She whispered, "Maybe just let it slide. We need their contract." Maya didn't respond. She just took her seat across from Richard, meeting his eyes without blinking. The engines hummed as the pilot prepared for takeoff. Conversations swirled again, about mergers, golf trips, political donations, but every so often, Richard's gaze drifted to Maya, like he was studying a puzzle he didn't respect enough to solve. When the flight attendant offered champagne, Richard raised his glass and said loudly, "Here's to real businessmen, and to their support staff." More laughter. Maya lifted her glass of water instead. "Here's to people who underestimate others. They always make the best headlines." A few chuckles broke the tension, but Richard's smile thinned. The cabin grew quieter as the jet taxied. Maya stared out the oval window, hiding her clenched fists. The narration slipped in. Every humiliation begins the same way, with silence, with a smile, with the hope that dignity might outweigh insult. But silence was never meant to last forever. The jet lifted, slicing into the sky. The battle had only just begun. The seatbelt sign clicked off, and champagne glasses clinked in the golden cabin light. The Gulfstream leveled out above the clouds, a floating boardroom with leather and polished wood. Richard Hale loosened his tie, stretching like he owned the air itself. He glanced across the table at Maya, smirking. "So, Dr. Carter," he said, exaggerating the title, "what exactly is your specialty? Smiling at investors, or picking out the leather on these seats?" A ripple of laughter ran through the men. Maya placed her hands calmly on the table. "My specialty is designing fleets, negotiating contracts, and running an aviation company worth $200 million. Richard's eyebrows arched. "Impressive for you." The pause was deliberate. The cabin grew quieter. Carla leaned toward Maya, whispering, "Please, don't rise to it." Maya exhaled slowly through her nose. Richard wasn't done. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Let me guess. First in your family to go to college. Worked twice as hard for half the results. The American dream, right?" He didn't wait for an answer. "I respect the hustle. Really do. But let's not pretend hustle makes you equal." Maya's throat tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "You know very little about me, or my family. Richard chuckled. Families tell a lot, though. Mine built steel, railroads, banks, legacy, generations of power. I assume yours. He tilted his head, smirk widening. Cotton fields, sharecroppers, maybe janitors in the airlines before you. One of the younger executives shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Maya's nails pressed crescents into her palm, under the table. The narration whispered through the silence. Racism rarely shouts. It drips, steady, like water on stone, until it believes it has carved you hollow. She met his gaze. My father flew bombers in World War II. Tuskegee Airmen. My mother was a professor. So no, not janitors, builders. Richard clapped slowly, mock applause echoing in the cabin. Touché, but let's be real. No matter how shiny the title, people like you don't run the world. You get paraded. You're the face. Meanwhile, men like me keep the engines running. Carla shot Maya a desperate glance, her whisper trembling. Contracts, Maya. We need their money. Just let it go. Maya's lips pressed tight, but she stayed silent. Richard leaned back, satisfied with her restraint. He raised his glass. Don't get me wrong. You're smart, polished, but this industry, still a man's game. Still our game. The other men chuckled. Maya finally spoke, her voice low but sharp. Funny. I own the jet you're sitting on. That silenced them for a heartbeat, before Richard roared with laughter. Oh, sweetheart, owning a jet doesn't mean owning respect. That has to be earned. The word sweetheart hung in the air like a slap. Maya sat back, breathing slowly. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was a coil tightening. The narration cut in. Every insult carried weight, but weight, when balanced on the right fulcrum, could become a weapon. The jet hummed above the clouds, but inside the cabin, the air had sharpened. Richard had pushed farther than most men dared. He wasn't finished, and neither was she. The jet cut smoothly through the sky, engines steady. A calm that mocked the storm inside the cabin. Richard poured himself another whiskey, swirling the amber liquid with idle arrogance. His voice carried over the quiet hum. You know, he said, I like you, Carter. You've got spirit, fire, reminds me of the help back home. Sharp tongues, quick tempers, but no matter how much fire you carry, the house still belongs to someone else. One of the men chuckled. Another shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Maya's knuckles whitened. Around her glass of water, Richard leaned forward, eyes gleaming with cruel curiosity. Tell me your daddy, what was he again? An Air Force janitor, or did they let him polish the planes? Maya froze. Carla's whisper was urgent, trembling. Don't, please, don't. Richard smirked, enjoying her silence. I bet he wore the uniform, sure, but let's not pretend they gave him real wings. Maybe he carried bags. Maybe he cleaned boots. That's the ceiling, Carter. That's the legacy. Maya's chest tightened. Images of her father, medals lined neatly in a glass case. Stories of battles fought at 20,000 feet. The quiet pride in his voice flooded her mind. Richard's laugh cut through them. A janitor with wings. That's cute. The glass in Maya's hand trembled. She set it down slowly, carefully. Then she rose. Say it again, she said, voice steady but low. Richard's grin widened. What, that your daddy was a... The crack echoed like a gunshot. Her palm met his face, sharp and unflinching. His glass tumbled, whiskey spilling across the polished table. The cabin froze. No one breathed. Carla's gasp broke the silence. Richard's cheek flamed red, his eyes wide in shock. Then his face twisted with rage. You, Maya, stood over him, shoulders squared, eyes burning. My father flew in wars so men like you could drink whiskey in peace. He earned every inch of sky you crawl through. You don't speak his name. The younger executive's lips parted, as if to say something, then he shut them quickly. Another man whispered, almost too low to hear. Damn. Richard touched his cheek, staring at her like she'd committed a crime against the crown. His voice shook, not from pain, but from disbelief. You just signed your death warrant. Maya's voice cut through him, calm and cold. So be it. Silence weighed heavy. The cabin air felt thinner, tighter, as if the jet itself had stopped breathing. The narration whispered over the moment. Every act of resistance begins with a crack. Sometimes it is words, sometimes it is silence, and sometimes it is the sound of a slap against centuries of arrogance. For the first time, Richard Hale had no words. The balance had shifted. Richard's cheeks still burned, crimson against his pale skin. He sat, frozen for a beat, then slowly straightened. eyes narrowing into slits. You just assaulted me, he hissed. On your own jet. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Maya didn't flinch. Unfortunately, yes. The men around the cabin shifted in their seats. Some avoided her eyes, others smirked nervously, unsure which side to take. Richard leaned forward, voice sharp as broken glass. I'll own you, Carter. I'll bury you in lawsuits. Your company, your reputation, your money, gone. You'll be nothing more than a cautionary tale. Carla tugged at Maya's sleeve, panic in her whisper. Maya, please, apologize. Do something before this gets worse. Maya shook her head slowly, eyes never leaving Richard. No apology can cleanse the filth he just spoke. Richard barked a laugh, bitter and loud. Filth. That's rich. You think you can lecture me? You think you can slap me and walk away? No, sweetheart. I make and unmake careers. I can blacklist you from every contract, every investor, every bank. By the time I'm finished, you'll be begging me for crumbs. One of the younger executives muttered under his breath. Maybe let it go, Rich. Richard snapped his head toward him. Shut up. You're on my payroll because I allow it. Don't forget that. The man sank back into his seat, silent again. Maya's voice cut through the cabin, calm but edged with steel. Threats don't scare me. They never have. My father survived war. My mother survived segregation. You think I'll crumble because a spoiled CEO waves his checkbook? Richard smirked, pulling out his phone. His fingers tapped rapidly. It's already done. By the time we land, your name will be poison. Watch. Carla's face went pale. Oh God. Richard lifted his glass with a shaky hand, swallowing the rest of his whiskey. You should have kept quiet. Could have smiled, played along. That's what your kind is supposed to do. The cabin went utterly still. The words lingered, heavier than the altitude. Maya leaned in, her eyes unwavering. My kind. You mean the kind that refuses to bow? Then yes, I am exactly that. Narration cut across the silence. Power assumes it is eternal, but every empire forgets. Arrogance always writes its own ending. Richard leaned back, sneering. We'll see who ends who. Outside the oval window, the endless sky stretched on, but inside, the war had already begun. By the time Maya's jet touched down in New York, the storm had already begun. Carla's phone buzzed nonstop, her eyes darting over the screen. Maya, you need to see this. Maya took the phone. Headlines screamed back at her. Black CEO meltdown in midair. Assault on prominent business leader. Unstable woman in aviation. Investors reconsider Skylink's future. Richard Hale speaks. I feared for my safety. Maya's stomach twisted, but her face stayed composed. Richard's voice echoed in her mind. By the time we land, your name will be poisoned. And he was right. Within hours, investors pulled out of contracts. Banks froze credit lines pending review. A statement leaked from one of her board members. We cannot condone violent, unprofessional behavior. Carla's voice cracked. They didn't even hear your side, Maya whispered, almost to herself. They never do. That night, cable news replayed the story on loop. A blurred photo of Maya walking down the jet stairs filled the screen. A panel of commentators debated her character, not Richard's actions. She's too emotional, one said. Dangerous, another chimed in. A classic case of affirmative action gone wrong, sneered a third. Maya muted the television, staring at the darkened reflection of her face on the screen. Narration cut in. When power strikes, it doesn't strike alone. It calls its friends, the media, the markets, the institutions built to silence those who resist. It moves quickly, crushing reputations before truth has the chance to breathe. The next morning, her lawyer called. Maya, they've filed 3 lawsuits already. Defamation, assault, damages. We can fight, but it'll drain you. Hale has bottomless pockets. Carla slammed her hands on the desk. This is insane. He provoked you. He humiliated you. Why isn't he on trial? The lawyers sighed, because his story fits their expectations. Yours doesn't. Maya closed her eyes. For the first time in years, her chest felt heavy, not with anger, but with fatigue. But giving up was not an option. She straightened in her chair, voice calm but resolute. If they want war, then they'll get it, but we won't fight it their way. Carla frowned. Then how? Maya's gaze hardened. By showing the world who Richard Hale really is. Her assistant's eyes widened. But he's untouchable. He owns politicians, media outlets. Maya cut her off. Everyone has cracks, and arrogance always leaves trails. The narration whispered. The smear was designed to bury her, but some seeds only grow when they are forced underground, outside her office window. The city glowed indifferent, neon and steel. Inside, Maya felt the first spark of resistance ignite. Richard thought he had ended her, but he had only written the prologue. The boardroom was colder than usual, not in temperature, but in loyalty. Maya sat at the head of the long mahogany table, facing the executives she had handpicked over the years, men and women who had once praised her vision, toasted her victories, and pledged their allegiance to Skylink. Now they wouldn't meet her eyes. Richard's smear campaign had seeped into every corner of her company. Investors fled, clients canceled contracts, and now, the final blow, her own board was wavering. One of the senior members, Harris, cleared his throat. Dr. Cotter, with respect, this situation has become untenable. The lawsuits, the headlines, Skylink can't withstand this level of scrutiny. Maya folded her hands. Scrutiny or sabotage? A murmur rippled across the table. Harris avoided her gaze. The perception is damaging. Perhaps it's best if you step down, at least temporarily. Let an interim figure stabilize things. Carla, seated at Maya's right, shot up. You're asking her to hand her company to the very people trying to destroy it. Another board member, Linda, shifted uncomfortably. It's not personal. It's survival. Maya's voice was low, steady. It's always personal when power is on the line. Don't lie to me. Harris finally looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw the truth. Fear. Fear of Richard Hale's reach. Fear of losing their wealth, their positions. One by one, members spoke, rationalizing betrayal as we need stability. The brand can't recover with you as the face. It's not about color, it's about optics. Maya leaned back, her gaze sweeping over them. Optics is just another word for cowardice. You'd rather bow to him than stand with me. No one responded. Silence confirmed what words refused. After the end of the meeting, Hafed tendered resignations. Others signed a motion to restrict her authority. When the room emptied, Carla slammed her notebook shut. Snakes. All of them. After everything you built. Maya didn't answer immediately. She stared at the glossy table, the faint reflection of her own tired eyes. Then she whispered, let them go. Better to see betrayal now than later. Carla sat back, trembling with anger. How do we fight this? He owns the board, the press, the money. Maya cut her off. No. He owns fear. That's different. Carla blinked. And fear doesn't last forever. Maya's lips curved into a faint smile. No empire does. That night, as Carla combed through documents for damage control, she froze. Maya, look at this. She slid a folder across the desk. Offshore accounts, shell companies, transaction trails linking Richard Hale to bribery, tax fraud, embezzlement. Maya flipped through the pages, her pulse quickening. Where did you get this? Anonymously, could be a former partner, could be someone he burned. Doesn't matter, it's real. Maya closed the folder slowly, a fire kindling in her chest. Narration slipped in. Betrayal stabs deep, but sometimes, betrayal also reveals, in the cracks left by deserters, truth can crawl through. She looked up, eyes sharp again. Then he's not untouchable, and I'm not finished. Carla leaned forward, whispering, this could ruin him. Maya shook her head. No, this will expose him. There's a difference. Ruin is punishment. Exposure is justice. The weight of betrayal still pressed heavy, but now, in her hands, she held a weapon sharper than revenge. For the first time in days, she breathed easily. Richard thought the slap was her only rebellion. He hadn't yet seen what silence and patience could build. The city lights blinked like scattered stars as Maya sat in her dim office. The leaked documents spread across the table. Each page was a fracture in Richard Hale's empire. Offshore accounts, bribes disguised as consulting fees, payments to silence complaints. But truth alone wasn't enough. It needed voices, witnesses, light. Carla paced the room, restless. If we leak this, they'll call it fake. He'll spin it. We need something stronger. Maya nodded slowly. We need people. Others he's hurt. He can't bury everyone. Carla hesitated. But who would risk crossing him? Maya's gaze hardened. The ones who already lost everything. 2 days later, in a quiet cafe far from Wall Street, Maya met her first ally. A woman in her late 30s, eyes weary but resolute. Name's Alicia, she said, sliding into the booth. I worked under Hale for 5 years. He promised promotions, contracts. When I refused his conditions, he blacklisted me. Haven't worked in the industry since. Maya listened, her heart tightening. Would you testify? Alicia's jaw clenched. If it means bringing him down, yes. That night, Maya met with a young man, Daniel, once an intern at Hale's firm. He spoke quickly, nervously. He called me a quota hire, said I should be grateful he even let me in the building. When I complained, HR laughed. 2 weeks later, I was gone, blacklisted. Maya's voice was gentle. Would you go public? Daniel swallowed hard, then nodded. I'm tired of being scared. Over the next week, more came. Former employees, small business owners crushed by Hale's monopolies, even a journalist who had once tried to investigate him, only to be threatened into silence. Each meeting carried the same rhythm. Fear, hesitation, then resolve. Carla whispered one night. We're building an army. Maya shook her head. Not an army, a mirror. We'll show the world who he really is. One evening, Maya stood before the small group gathered in her office. A dozen faces, diverse, scarred by experience, but lit with determination. This isn't just about me, Maya said, her voice steady. He tried to erase me, but he's erased all of you too. We don't win by shouting louder than his lies. We win by standing together, by refusing to be silent. Alicia raised her chin. He silenced me once. Never again, Daniel added. He thinks we're weak alone. Let's show him what we are together. Maya felt the weight of their eyes, the shared fire burning. Narration cut in. Resistance isn't born in palaces. It's born in back rooms, quiet cafes, whispered confessions. It grows not from power, but from pain, and from the courage to share it. Carla spread the documents across the table. So what's the plan? Maya's voice was calm, decisive. We take this to the people. No backdoor deals. No leaks buried in blogs. We go live. Press conference records, testimonies. The world will see him fall in real time. The room stirred, fear mixing with anticipation. Richard Hale has money, connections, media, Maya continued, but none of that protects him from truth, and truth only needs one chance to be heard. Carla looked at her, eyes wide. This is risky. He'll come at you harder than ever. Maya allowed a faint smile. Let him. Every empire looks invincible until the moment it cracks. The group nodded, determination spreading like a spark, catching dry grass. That the first step of the fight was silence. The second was endurance. Now came revelation. The hotel ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Cameras lined the back wall. Journalists filled the rows of chairs, their pens poised, recorders glowing red. A giant Skylink logo shimmered on the backdrop behind the podium. Maya stood just off stage, hands resting lightly on the documents she carried. Her heart pounded, but her face was calm. Carla leaned close. Once you walk out there, there's no turning back. Maya exhaled slowly. I don't want to turn back. The room hushed as she stepped to the podium. Flashbulbs erupted, voices murmured. She looked out over the crowd, dozens of reporters, cameras beaming live to millions. Good afternoon, she began, her voice steady. My name is Dr. Maya Carter. Many of you know me as the founder of Skylink Aviation. Some of you only know me from headlines that say I am unstable, violent, unfit. She let the words settle. But those headlines were written by men who profit from silence. Today, we're breaking that silence. She nodded. Carla placed a stack of binders on the podium. These are financial records, emails, and testimonies exposing Richard Hale, bribery, tax fraud, systemic discrimination, threats against employees, patterns of harassment stretching over decades. Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters raised hands, voices overlapping. Do you have proof? Is this verified? Maya's voice cut cleanly. Proof is not the issue. Proof is here. The issue is whether you're ready to listen. She gestured to the side of the stage. Alicia walked out first, her hands trembling slightly but her chin high. She stepped to the microphone. He destroyed my career when I refused his advances. He called me a liar. I stayed silent, out of fear. I won't anymore. Daniel followed, his voice breaking as he spoke. He told me I was only there to make the company look diverse. He laughed when I said I wanted to stay long-term. I was gone in 2 weeks. One by one, more voices filled the stage. Men and women, black, brown, white. Their stories blended into a chorus of corruption and cruelty. The journalists scribbled furiously. Cameras zoomed in. The tide was shifting. And then, as if on cue, Richard Hale himself stormed into the room. Draped in a designer suit, flanked by lawyers, he strode to the front, laughter spilling from his lips. This is pathetic, he declared. A circus act. These people are bitter, washed-up nobodies, paid to smear me. And you, he pointed directly at Maya. You are a fraud. A violent, unstable fraud. The room buzzed with chaos. Maya stood still, letting him rant. His voice rose, his face flushed, his mask slipping under the heat of exposure. You think you can ruin me with lies, he barked. I own this industry. I own the press. Carla stepped forward, clicking a remote. The screen behind them lit up with slides, bank transfers, signatures, offshore account ledgers. The evidence glowed 10 feet tall, undeniable. The room erupted with shouts. Richard froze. His words faltered. Sweat dotted his forehead. One journalist shouted, Mr. Hale, how do you explain these accounts? Another, did you threaten employees with blacklisting? His lawyers whispered urgently, tugging at his sleeve, but Richard shoved them off. This is fake, fabricated. Maya finally spoke, her voice quiet but carrying over the noise. Truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs light, and light always finds its way through cracks. The camera zoomed in on Richard's face, red, frantic, cornered dot. For the first time, the mighty CEO looked small. Narration cut in. The slap was the spark, the smear was the fire. But truth was the storm, and storms do not ask permission to arrive. By the time Maya stepped down from the podium, Richard was drowning in a sea of questions, his empire collapsing in real time. And she was free. The fallout came fast. Within 24 hours, headlines across every major outlet carried Richard Hale's name, but this time, not in praise. Skylink CEO accused of fraud, racism, harassment. Whistleblowers emerge with damning evidence. Maya Carter speaks out, breaking silence in aviation television panels, dissected every frame of the press conference. Online forums overflowed with testimonies from former employees, emboldened to speak up. Anonymous tips poured in, confirming corruption that stretched back years. Richard's lawyers scrambled, filing injunctions, shouting defamation at anyone who printed the truth. But every hour brought fresh proof. Bank transfers, contracts, flight logs, pieces of a puzzle forming the undeniable image of a predator who thought himself untouchable. But Maya watched the chaos unfold from her apartment, the city lights glowing beyond her window. Carla sat nearby, scrolling through her phone, smirking at each new headline. Listen to this, Carla read aloud. Richard Hale removed from Skylink board. Federal investigation opened. She looked up, grinning. He's finished. Maya sipped her tea, silent. Relief felt strange. It wasn't triumph. It was release. Carla studied her. You don't look happy. Maya set the cup down gently. Happiness isn't the right word. Justice. That's closer. 2 days later, Richard was cornered again, this time on live television. Reporters swarmed as he exited a courthouse. His expensive suit crumpled, his tie loose. Mr. Hale, do you deny the fraud charges? What about the harassment testimonies? He snarled into the cameras. This is a witch hunt. I built this industry. They should be thanking me. As he tried to push through the crowd, one young journalist shouted the question that cut through the noise. Do you regret slapping Dr. Carter on her own jet? The crowd went still. The cameras caught it, the twitch in his jaw, the flash of panic. For once, Richard had no words. He shoved past them, face ashen. Silence screaming louder than denial. Narration sliced in. Power can silence the weak for a time. But when the weak rise, power crumbles under its own arrogance. That evening, Maya returned to her hangar. The familiar scent of jet fuel and steel greeted her. Her private jets sat in the bay, polished and gleaming, the very place where the humiliation had begun. She placed her palm against the cool metal. They tried to bury me here, she whispered. Instead, I grew roots. Behind her, Alicia appeared, hesitant. Dr. Carter. Maya turned, smiling warmly. You came. Alicia nodded. I wanted to thank you for giving me courage. Maya shook her head. No, you already had courage. You just needed space to use it. Tears welled in Alicia's eyes. He can't hurt us anymore. No, Maya said softly. Not anymore. The final blow arrived the next morning. Breaking news. Richard Hale indicted on charges of tax fraud, money laundering, and workplace harassment. Skylink shares plummeted. His board severed ties. Sponsors vanished. His empire was crumbling brick by brick, under the same spotlight he had once used to blind others. And in a poetic twist, the very employees he had discarded were now the voices that sealed his fate. Their testimonies played on national news, their names no longer whispered in shame but spoken with pride. Carla called Maya that evening. her voice buzzing with excitement. He's officially barred from leaving the country. Bail denied. The mighty Richard Hale, grounded. Maya allowed herself a small laugh. Grounded, how fitting. Carla chuckled. What will you do now? Maya gazed out at the night sky, stars flickering above the horizon. I'll keep flying. But not just for me, for everyone who was told they couldn't. Narration closed the story. The slap was meant to humiliate. Instead, it became a spark. Racism, abuse of power, betrayal, all crumbled under the weight of truth. In the end, justice wasn't loud or violent. It was steady, inevitable, and poetic. Maya walked back into the hangar, her footsteps echoing against the walls. Behind her, the world roared with the noise of Richard Hale's downfall. Ahead of her, the runway stretched clear, endless, waiting. She smiled. Time to fly.